Chapter 11: The 9 Battlegrounds. Overview. This chapter discusses the principles of military operations across 9 distinct types of terrain, emphasizing the importance of leveraging the psychological states of soldiers in each scenario to implement corresponding strategies. Sun Tzu articulates key doctrines such as: speed is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unpreparedness and attack where they are unguarded. And concentrate force in one direction to strike down enemy generals even 1,000 miles away. These principles have been revered by military strategists throughout history, across cultures. Sun Tzu also highlights the advantages of penetrating deep into enemy territory. First, when advancing far into enemy lands, soldiers are more likely to obey orders and less likely to flee, which enhances command effectiveness. When acting as the invader, the deeper you go, the more focused the troops become, the shallower, the more scattered. Second, operations deep in enemy territory allow the army to provision itself locally, thereby weakening the enemy and strengthening its own forces. Plunder the fertile fields to feed the army. Finally, soldiers surrounded by enemies and trapped in dangerous terrain become fearless and fight with full resolve. When troops are in deep peril, they become unafraid. When there's no way out, they will fight. Sun Tzu believed that to achieve victory, a general must sometimes place troops in desperate circumstances. Cast them into death ground and they will survive. Plunge them into dire straits and they will live. When soldiers realize that death is inevitable unless they fight, they will muster all their strength and determination, fighting with unyielding courage to defeat the enemy. Therefore, a capable general must know how to gather the full might of the army and cast it into peril. For only by doing so can one turn a seemingly fatal situation into a path to survival and triumph. 1. The 9 types of ground and their strategic applications. Sun Tzu said, according to the principles of warfare, one must understand that military geography includes 9 types of terrain: dispersive ground, light ground, contentious ground, open ground, intersecting ground, focal ground, difficult ground, enclosed ground, and deadly ground. Dispersive ground refers to areas within one's own territory. Light ground is territory lightly penetrated into the enemy's domain. Contentious ground is that which offers mutual advantage to both sides. Open ground is terrain that both our forces and the enemy can access freely. In the case of territories bordering 3 rival states, the one who arrives first can ally with the local lords and gain support. This is known as intersecting ground. When penetrating deep into enemy territory and surrounded by many of the enemy's cities, it is called focal ground. Mountainous terrain, marshlands, and areas with rivers and swamps difficult to traverse are referred to as difficult ground. Areas where the roads are narrow, the routes of retreat are distant, and the enemy can use few to strike many are enclosed ground. Where only a swift battle offers survival and delay means destruction is known as deadly ground. Therefore, do not engage in battle on dispersive ground. Do not linger long on light ground. Do not launch a premature attack on contentious ground. Do not allow your formations to become disjointed on open ground. On intersecting ground, maintain broad alliances. On focal ground, launch widespread offensives. On difficult ground, move quickly through. On enclosed ground, devise a strategy to break out. On deadly ground, fight with the will to win or perish. Reflections. Sun Tzu said, according to the principles of warfare, terrain can be classified into 9 types: dispersive ground, light ground, contentious ground, open ground, intersecting ground, serious ground, difficult ground, encircled ground, and fatal ground. Dispersive ground refers to areas within one's own territory where the feudal lords fight. Soldiers tend to scatter, hence not ideal for engagement. Light ground refers to areas where one has entered only shallowly into enemy territory, is unsuitable for prolonged stay. Contentious ground is where both sides can benefit equally. It must not be attacked passively or rashly. Open ground is accessible by both our army and the enemy. Communication must remain unbroken. Intersecting ground lies at the junction of three states. Whichever side arrives first can gain support from allied lords, so alliances should be secured. Serious ground refers to deep penetration into enemy territory. Far from one's own cities, resources must be seized quickly. Difficult ground includes forests, rugged terrain, mountains, swamps, and all places that are hard to traverse. It should be passed through quickly. Encircled ground is where entry is narrow, retreat is long and winding, and the enemy can attack with a small force against our large one. This requires clever strategy. Fatal ground is where survival depends on swift and courageous action. Fight bravely or face certain death. From this classification, Sun Tzu outlines distinct principles for operations in each type of terrain, along with the remedial measures to be taken if those principles are violated. Let us take the example of on intersecting ground, form alliances to illustrate. Here, Sun Tzu emphasizes the importance of building broad diplomatic relationships, securing the support of neighboring states, and cultivating goodwill with allies. He warns against making enemies everywhere and advocates for a favorable international environment, which is essential for long-term strategic development. 2. Divide and conquer, the art of disrupting enemy unity. In ancient times, those skilled in warfare could disrupt the enemy's cohesion, separating their front from the rear, breaking coordination between the main and supporting forces, cutting communication between commanders and soldiers, and severing the hierarchy between ranks. When the enemy was dispersed, they could not regroup. Even if they managed to regroup, they could not organize effectively. As for our own forces, we attack when advantageous and hold back when the conditions are unfavorable. Reflections. Sun Tzu here puts forward the strategic principle of advancing when it is advantageous and stopping when it is not. He believed that a wise commander should always choose the most favorable time to take action. Such commanders employ various tactics to divide and weaken the enemy, leaving them in a fragmented and vulnerable state. They judge the situation carefully, knowing when to advance and when to retreat, when to attack and when to defend, always aligning their actions with the greater interests of the war as a whole. In the second year of Wei Qinglong, 234 A.D., Lu Sun of Eastern Wu led an army of 300,000 to attack Hefei. It was during the peak of summer, and many soldiers and horses fell ill due to the extreme heat. Lu Sun decided to withdraw, but he showed no sign of doing so. He ordered his troops to plant beans and grains outside the camp, while he and his generals entertained themselves by shooting arrows at the camp gate. At the same time, he instructed Zhuge Jin to ready the ships and create the impression of preparing for an assault on Xiangyang. The Wei forces were puzzled by these mixed signals. While they were still trying to decipher Eastern Wu's intentions, Lu Sun had already safely withdrawn his army along 3 separate routes. Emperor Chao Rui of Wei sighed and said Lu Sun's use of troops is no less than that of Sun Wu. Indeed, advancing when it is advantageous and stopping when it is not, Lu Sun had mastered this principle to perfection. 3. Strike at the heart, speed and surprise in warfare. Now, one might ask, if the enemy is strong and well prepared, poised to attack, how should we respond? The answer: seize the heart of their position, then they will follow our lead. The essence of warfare lies in speed. Strike while the enemy is unprepared, take routes they least expect, and attack where they are undefended. Reflections. Speed is the essence of warfare. This is one of Sun Tzu's most renowned military principles, with a core emphasis on the word speed. As the saying goes, time is combat power. Only by seizing time and grasping the moment can one achieve swift victory and destroy the enemy effectively. In warfare, speed is crucial. It must strike like thunder before the enemy can cover their ears, catching them completely off guard. If our army advances with unstoppable momentum and attacks unexpectedly, it can swiftly conclude the battle with a decisive win. Therefore, Sun Tzu consistently advocated for rapid and unpredictable military operations. Speed in movement and attack should always surprise the enemy, leaving them no time to react. Throughout history, both in Eastern and Western warfare, rapid victory has always been a key goal. Even at the strategic level, attackers often aim to resolve conflicts quickly. Hence, Sun Tzu's concept of valuing speed carries universal significance. The famous strategy: openly repair the plank roads while secretly marching to Chinsong, exemplifies this idea. In 206 BC, after Xiongnu divided the territories and appointed kings, Liu Bang was assigned to the remote regions of Bashu and Hanzhong, which he deeply resented. On his way there, he ordered the destruction of the plank roads to signal that he had no intention of returning. Later, as Xiongnu became entangled in war with King Tianrong of Qi and could no longer focus on the west, Liu Bang decided to strike north and retake the Three Qins region. Publicly, he ordered Fan Kuai to lead 1,000 troops to restore the destroyed plank roads within a month. Zhang Han, the king of Yong, believed that the hundreds of miles of mountain roads would take at least a year to rebuild and let down his guard. Before long, the three kings in Guangzhou were defeated. The key lay in the extraordinary speed of the Han army. Han Xian had secretly discovered a narrow path through Chinsong that led directly to the central plains. While pretending to repair the plank roads to mislead Xiongnu and Zhang Han, Liu Bang's army marched swiftly day and night along this secret route. They reached Desanguin Pass without being noticed, effectively trapping Zhang Han like a turtle in a jar. For unity and self-sufficiency in deep operations. The principle of deep operations within enemy territory is this: once deep in, the troops must be of one mind, leaving the enemy no chance to resist. Forage in fertile fields to ensure ample provisions for the army. Reflections. Sun Tzu advocated for deep penetration into enemy territory as a strategic approach to warfare. He believed that the deeper an army advanced into enemy land, the more focused and obedient the soldiers would become, driven to press forward with determination. In resource-rich areas, such campaigns also made it easier to secure provisions, providing critical support for victory. By penetrating deeply, one could also raise morale and apply clever tactics to overcome the enemy. In the year 409 AD, Liu Yu of the Eastern Jin dynasty led an army of 100,000 deep into the territory of southern Yan. The southern Yan general Gong Sun Wulo advised defending the naturally fortified Daxian Mountain, known as the Southern Natural Barrier of Qi, to block the enemy and weaken their momentum. However, the Yan ruler Morong Chao chose to let the enemy advance deep into their territory before launching a counterattack with elite troops. This decision allowed the Jin army to pass the mountain barrier unopposed. Once they reached the open plains, they found abundant crops ready for harvest, solving their food shortage with ease. When Liu Yu's forces arrived at Linsu, Morong Chao personally led 90,000 troops to engage them. The Jin vanguard quickly seized Jumi River south of the city and launched a direct assault on Linsu. With the city poorly defended, it fell quickly. Morong Chao fled to Guanggu, but Liu Yu capitalized on the victory and attacked again, capturing Guanggu and executing Morong Chao. Thus, southern Yan was destroyed. 5. Harnessing resolve, turning desperation into victory. Conserve the strength of the soldiers, avoid overexertion, lift morale, focus energy, and deploy troops with ingenuity so the enemy cannot grasp your intent. Place your army in a situation where retreat is impossible and the soldiers will fight with unyielding resolve. What can they not achieve in such a state? When troops are ready to die rather than retreat, they will fight with absolute determination. Reflections. Sun Tzu emphasized the importance of preserving soldiers' strength during combat, ensuring that the army maintains high fighting capacity. He also stressed the need to strictly guard military secrets and move troops with unpredictability, like ghosts and spirits, so that the enemy cannot anticipate or interpret the army's intentions, ultimately falling into a carefully laid trap. A historical example of this principle is the story of King Gojien of Yu and King Fuchai of Wu. After Fuchai ascended the throne, he launched a campaign against Yu. Gojien was defeated and surrendered, becoming a servant to King Fuchai. Determined to one day seek revenge, Gojien concealed his intentions. He served Fuchai with total obedience, never leaving his side. When Fuchai fell ill, Gojien even tasted his feces to check on his health, further deceiving the Wu king. Fooled by this loyalty, Fuchai believed Gojien had given up all thoughts of revenge and allowed him to return to Yu. Once home, Gojien slept on brushwood and tasted bile daily to remind himself of his humiliation, while strengthening his nation's power in secret. At the same time, he sent Wu lavish tributes of treasures and beautiful women, maintaining a facade of submission and loyalty. Meanwhile, Fuchai grew arrogant and indulgent, executing loyal ministers and destabilizing his kingdom. Gojien continued to flatter him. When Wu attacked Qi, you sent troops to support Wu, further reinforcing the illusion of loyalty. After Wu's defeat at ailing and growing tensions with the Jin state, Gojien seized the opportunity. He launched a three-pronged campaign, won 3 consecutive battles, captured the Wu capital, and killed the Wu crown prince. 6. Desperation breeds devotion. The psychology of unyielding troops. When soldiers are trapped in danger, fear disappears. When there is no escape, unity emerges. When deep within enemy lines, there is no room for division. When desperate, they will fight to the end. Thus, an army placed in such a position does not need strict discipline to remain vigilant, nor coercion to carry out its tasks. It binds itself with loyalty, obeys without command, and stays firm without restraint. Superstition and rumors must be strictly forbidden, lest soldiers become confused or anxious, leading to fear or desertion, even at the cost of death. The reason soldiers are willing to abandon wealth is not because they do not value it. The reason they are willing to sacrifice their lives is not because they do not cherish them. When the order to march is given, they sit and weep, tears soaking their sleeves. They lie down, their faces wet with grief. Yet once cast into a desperate situation, they fight with the courage of Zhuangzhu and Chao Gue. Reflections. Sun Tzu pointed out that the deeper the troops are pushed into perilous situations with no way to retreat, the more disciplined, united, and determined they become. This leads to unexpected outcomes in battle. Sun Tzu said, "In desperate ground, survival lies in swift battle, if not swift, then death. In death ground, I will show them they cannot live. In death ground, they will fight." When the army is placed in a desperate situation, only by fighting with all their might can they hope to survive. Certain death brings forth the will to live. If they do not fight, they will certainly perish. Thus, soldiers must be told to prepare for death and fight with courage, seeking life from the jaws of death. In dialogue between King Wu of Wu and Sun Wu, there's a detailed discussion on fighting in desperate ground. King Wu asked Sun Wu, "If my army crosses the border and camps in enemy territory, and the enemy suddenly surrounds us heavily, with no way to break through, how can I inspire the troops to fight with all their strength and break the siege?" Sun Wu replied, "Dig deep trenches and build high ramparts to show defensive readiness. Remain quiet and motionless to conceal our capabilities. Announce to the whole army the desperate nature of our situation. Slaughter cattle and burn the wagons to provide a final feast. Then destroy all supplies, fill in wells and stoves, cut off hair, discard hats, and completely eliminate thoughts of returning home. With all escape routes severed, the soldiers will have no other plans but to fight. They will sharpen their weapons and focus their strength. Then, with war drums thundering and battle cries shaking the air, the enemy will be thrown into confusion. Split the elite troops and launch a swift attack on the enemy's rear. This is the strategy of seeking life through apparent loss. Therefore it is said, those who face hardship without strategy will be doomed. Those who are desperate yet refuse to fight will perish. This is Sun Tzu's concrete explanation of the strategy of fighting in Battlegrounds. The uprising of Chunsheng and Wu Guang is a real-life example of fighting from desperation. In the first year of Qin Shi's reign, 209 BC, Chunsheng, Wu Guang, and more than 900 impoverished peasants were conscripted from the Huai River region to serve in Yuyang. On their way, they were delayed by heavy rains and impassable roads in Day's Township, missing their deadline. According to Qin law, those who missed the deadline for military duty were sentenced to death. In other words, whether they advanced or retreated, death awaited them. So Chunsheng and Wu Guang secretly plotted a rebellion. They cut down trees for weapons, raised poles as banners, killed the Qin official, and began taking cities and towns. Farmers across the region responded enthusiastically, and local landlords fled in panic. The rebel army quickly captured the city of Chun. The oppressed masses rose in support, and the army grew to tens of thousands. Chunsheng was proclaimed king, Wu Guang the vice king, and the new regime was named Zhongchu. This shook the mighty Qin dynasty to its foundations. 7. Forged by crisis, united as one. Therefore, a commander skilled in the art of war handles his troops like one manipulates the Shuiran, serpent. The Shuiran, found in the mountains, if struck on the head, its tail attacks. If struck on the tail, its head strikes back. If struck in the middle, both head and tail respond together. One may ask, can an army truly behave like the Shuiran? The answer, yes. Even enemies like the Wu and Yu, when crossing a river in the same boat and caught in a storm, will work together as if they were one body, like a person's left and right hands. Thus, relying solely on dramatic gestures, such as tying up horses or bearing wheels to symbolize determination, is not dependable. To unite soldiers as one, effective leadership and training are essential. To make both the strong and the weak useful, the terrain must be skillfully exploited. A true master of warfare can make the whole army act with a single heart, not merely by will, but by necessity driven by the circumstances. Reflections. Sun Tzu here emphasizes the art of leadership and the importance of unity among officers and soldiers. Managing the army requires method, and the commander or leader must ensure the troops act in coordination, forming a unified operational strategy. Sun Tzu believed that warfare is a contest of collective strength between two armies, not a matter of individual bravery or personal duels. This command art of organizing the masses and fighting with the masses requires the talent to lead and control the army as if commanding a single person. Each unit should be able to support, coordinate with, and reinforce one another, forming an organic whole. General Yu Fei of the Song dynasty achieved precisely this level of unity, where soldiers moved as one. Yu Fei showed great care for his troops. When soldiers were ill, he personally prepared their medicine. When officers were stationed far from home, he sent his wife to comfort their families. When soldiers died in battle, he honored them with proper rituals and raised their orphans. Whenever rewards were issued, he shared them equally with his men. Yet Yu Fei was also strict and clear in discipline and rewards. Once, when a division unfairly distributed rewards, he immediately ordered the responsible officer executed. Because Yu Fei's troops strictly obeyed orders and maintained strict discipline, they never harassed civilians. They would rather freeze than dismantle a house, and rather starve than loot. Wherever the Yu army passed, locals welcomed them along the roads, raising their hands in respect. Some even moved to tears. To resist the Jin invaders and reclaim lost territories, from the second year of the Jianyan reign, 1128, after meeting the famed anti-Jin commander Zhongzhe, Yu Fei led the Yu army in hundreds of battles over more than a decade. In each campaign, his troops carried out his orders faithfully, fought bravely, and achieved victory. In the 10th year of the Shaoxing reign, 1140, Wanyan Wushu broke the treaty and attacked the Song. Yu Fei again led a northern expedition, successively reclaiming Zhengzhou and Luoyang, and then defeating the Jin army at Yanqing and Yingchang, advancing to Zhuxian town. Among the Jin troops, it was said, "It is easier to shake a mountain than to shake the Yu army." 8. Leading with strategy and unpredictability. The principles and methods for commanding an army are remaining calm to enable deep thinking and maintaining strict discipline with clear order. A commander must be able to blindfold the eyes and ears of his troops so that they know nothing of upcoming military actions. The methods of warfare should constantly change, and strategies must be renewed frequently, making them impossible to predict. The army should regularly change its encampment and take circuitous routes when advancing, so that outsiders cannot fathom its intentions. Reflections. Sun Tzu here speaks of the way of being a commander, remaining calm in the face of danger, possessing foresight and strategic insight, and embodying the qualities of stillness, depth, integrity, and order. People admire Zhuge Liang for his composure in the empty city stratagem, his strategic vision in the Longzhong plan, and his clarity in the debate with the scholars of Wu, all of which reflect Sun Tzu's ideal qualities of a commander. However, another historical figure, Prime Minister Xian of the Eastern Jin, was equally remarkable. In 383 AD, the former Qin ruler Fu Jian launched an invasion of the Eastern Jin with an army of 900,000, capturing key positions. Confident in his strength, he believed that even throwing horsewhips into the river would dam the flow and that the Jin would be easily destroyed. The Jin court was thrown into panic, but Prime Minister Xian remained calm. He recommended Generals Xie Shi and Xie Xian to lead 80,000 troops to resist the Qin army. When asked for his strategy, Xian replied, "It will be arranged in due time," and calmly went out for a carriage ride, returning only at night. Back at his residence, he worked late into the night issuing orders and plans. His leadership won the confidence of his officers. The ensuing Battle of Fei River resulted in a decisive Jin victory, where a weaker force defeated a stronger one. When the victory report was delivered to Xian, he was playing a game of Go with a guest. Asked about the outcome, he simply replied, "The young ones have routed the enemy." Later generations praised him for his demeanor of stillness with depth, order with integrity. During the Tang dynasty, Wang Shi, military commissioner of Eastern Zhejiang, also demonstrated such foresight and composure. In the 13th year of the Dazhong era, 859 AD, Zhejiang was plagued by a bandit uprising led by Qiu Fu, who repeatedly defeated government troops. Bandits and outlaws from forests and islands flocked under Qiu Fu's banner, quickly growing to over 30,000. He declared himself commander of all forces under heaven, amassed wealth and supplies, and hired skilled craftsmen to forge military equipment, shaking the central plains with his growing strength. The then military commissioner Zhang Jida sent forces to suppress the rebellion, but failed repeatedly. Helpless, he reported to the imperial court. Chancellor Xiaozi recommended former Annam protector Wang Shi for the task. Emperor Yizong appointed Wang Shi as the new military commissioner, replacing Zhang Jida. Upon arriving at court, Wang Shi was questioned by the emperor about his strategy for defeating Qiu Fu. He replied, "Just send me enough troops, and the rebellion will be crushed quickly." A eunuch objected, saying that deploying so many troops would be too costly. Wang Shi, unimpressed by sycophantic court officials, replied, "Deploying many troops will end the rebellion quickly and save money in the long run. If too few are sent and the rebellion drags on for months or years, the rebels will grow stronger and outlaws across Jianghuai will rise in support. This region provides the empire's main financial support. If these supplies are cut off, not even the court or the imperial guards will have enough to sustain themselves. Then how great will the costs be?" The emperor was persuaded and ordered troops from Zhongwu, Yicheng, and Huainan to report to Wang Shi. Upon taking office in Yuezhou and assuming command, Wang Shi immediately revised military orders and discipline. Under his reforms, complaints about pay disappeared, the sick got out of bed, and those demanding promotions before going to war fell silent. Wang Shi also discovered that Qiu Fu had infiltrated spies into Yuezhou, and that local officials had been secretly harboring them, offering food and shelter. Civil and military officials were colluding with Chiu Fu, hoping to save their families if the rebels captured the city. As a result, all secret plans and signals were leaked to Chiu Fu's army. Wang Shi quietly investigated and arrested all traitorous officials, executing them. He tightened city security, allowing no one in or out without strict screening. Night patrols were intensified, and Chiu Fu's intelligence network was broken. With the rear secured, Wang Shi began to implement his strategy. He ordered all counties in Yuezhou to open their granaries to aid the starving poor. Some objected, saying, "The rebel threat remains, and grain is urgently needed for the army. It cannot be given away." Wang Shi replied, "This is beyond your understanding." Others suggested building signal towers to report enemy movements, but Wang Shi only smiled and declined. None knew what he was planning. Some even doubted his ability to lead. When the campaign against Chiu Fu began, Wang Shi selected the weakest soldiers, mounted them on strong horses with minimal arms, and sent them ahead as scouts. His subordinates were puzzled but dared not question him. Under Wang Shi's command, the government troops engaged Chiu Fu's forces several times and defeated them. Chiu Fu was eventually surrounded in Shan County. Cut off from supplies and water, he was forced to surrender. At the victory celebration, Wang Shi drank heartily with his officers. Yet many still didn't understand his methods and asked him to explain. They said, "We've spent our lives in military service and fought countless battles, but following you this time has been a true honor. However, we don't understand why, when you arrived in Yuezhou and supplies were scarce, you opened the granaries to feed the poor." Wang Shi explained, "It's simple. Chiu Fu was gathering grain to lure the hungry. If I fed them first, they wouldn't be tempted to join him. Also, the counties had few troops. If Chiu Fu had arrived earlier, the rebel army would have used those stores against us." The officers asked, "Why didn't you build signal towers?" Wang Shi said, "Signal towers are for calling reinforcements. But I had already deployed all my troops. There were none left in Yuezhou to reinforce. Towers would just waste labor, alarm civilians, and cause panic." They asked, "Why did you assign weak soldiers with little equipment as scouts?" Wang Shi replied with a smile, "If I'd sent brave warriors with sharp weapons, they might have rushed into battle upon seeing the enemy, died, and failed to report back. Then we'd be blind to the enemy's approach. What good are scouts if they can't report?" His officers all nodded in admiration, saying, "This is beyond anything we could have imagined." 9. Command by necessity, mastering terrain, psychology, and irrevocable resolve. When a commander assigns a mission, it should be like sending soldiers up a height and removing the ladder. There is no retreat, only forward. Leading troops deep into enemy territory should be like releasing a trigger on a crossbow, an unstoppable advance. Burn the boats and break the cooking pots, symbols of a commitment to fight to the death. Treat the soldiers like herding sheep, driving them back and forth without revealing the destination. Gather the troops and place them in peril. This is the essence of commanding an army. The changes of the 9 kinds of terrain, the advantages of adaptability, and the psychology of the soldiers, these must all be thoroughly understood. In general, when an army penetrates deeply into enemy territory, its resolve becomes focused. When it enters only shallowly, its will becomes scattered. When forces leave their own land and cross into another country, the battleground is known as desperate ground. A place with many routes and connections is called intersecting ground. Deeper entry into the enemy's land is called serious ground, and shallower entry is called light ground. Terrain backed by natural obstacles with a narrow passage ahead is called encircled ground. A place where there is no way out is known as ground of death. Therefore, on scattered ground, unify the will of the troops. On light ground, keep formations tightly linked. On contentious ground, send troops to strike at the enemy's rear. On intersecting ground, strengthen defensive measures. On intersecting terrain, Tsudi, reinforce alliances with neighboring lords. In serious ground. Ensure stable supply lines. In difficult terrain, move quickly and do not linger. In encircled ground, seal all escape routes. On ground of death, display unwavering resolve to fight. Thus, soldiers will resist when surrounded, fight when there is no alternative, and follow commands when trapped in extreme danger. Reflections. Sun Tzu here proposed the strategy of climbing to high ground and removing the ladder, meaning that military commanders must be adept at deceiving and using their soldiers, cutting off all paths of retreat so they have no choice but to fight with determination and follow orders, engaging the enemy in a life-or-death struggle. In the third year of Qin Er Shi's reign, 206 BC, the Qin army defeated the Zhao army, and King Xie of Zhao retreated to defend Jiulu. Qin General Wang Li led troops to besiege Jiulu. King Zhao sought help from all sides, and King Huai of Chu sent Song Yi and Xiang Yu to rescue Zhao. When the Chu army reached Anyang, Song Yi, out of fear, refused to advance for days. Xiang Yu then issued an order. Each soldier was to carry only 3 days' worth of rations, all cooking pots were to be smashed, and all boats sunk. They were to fight to the death, with no thought of return, unless the siege on Jiulu was lifted. This inspired the troops with fierce determination. Xiang Yu launched 9 consecutive assaults, fighting 10 men for every one of his own, and ultimately routed the Qin forces and captured General Wang Li. After this battle, Xiang Yu's fame spread throughout the land, and he became the leader of all the feudal lords' armies. However, this climb high and remove the ladder tactic can also be used strategically in battle, first creating an illusion of opportunity for the enemy, luring them into a trap, then cutting off their retreat and delivering a decisive blow. 10. Without insight, there is no hegemony. If one is unaware of the strategic intentions of various feudal lords, one should not attempt to form alliances with them. If one is unfamiliar with terrain features such as forests, mountains, marshes, and lakes, one should not proceed with military maneuvers. If one does not make use of local guides, one cannot gain the advantages of the land. Any one of these deficiencies is enough to disqualify an army from being considered fit for hegemony or domination. An army worthy of ruling power, when attacking a major state, can prevent the enemy from mobilizing or assembling their troops in time. When its force of presence and intimidation weighs upon the enemy, their allied states will be unable to respond or assist effectively. Reflections. Sun Tzu believed that a truly powerful and dominant army must take the initiative in warfare, striking first to seize the advantage and dictate the course of battle. By launching an attack proactively, such a force could catch the enemy off guard, prevent their troops from assembling, throw their morale into disarray, and deter their allies from coming to their aid. In the late spring and autumn and warring states periods, the Qin army exemplified this principle. As the most formidable military force of the time, the Qin army swept through the 6 states, repelled the Xiongnu in the north, and subdued the southern tribes. Ultimately, it was this relentless and strategically decisive army that brought about the unification of China. 11. Victory through self-reliance, strength over diplomacy. Such strategy does not rely on forming alliances with other states, nor does it depend on amassing influence or power through external means. Instead, it rests entirely on the commander's independent judgment and the army's own strength to exert pressure directly on the enemy. Therefore, the enemy's cities can be conquered and their nations can be overthrown. Rewards are not bound by fixed regulations, and commands are not restricted by conventional systems. A truly skilled commander can lead an entire army as effortlessly as directing a single person. To mobilize troops, one must inspire them with real objectives, not empty rhetoric, attract them with the promise of gain, not intimidate them with threats of harm. Placing troops in a situation with no retreat, ground of death, awakens their will to survive. Throwing them into dire peril inspires them to fight with extraordinary determination. Only when soldiers are caught in extreme danger do they display the strength that decides victory or defeat. Reflections. Throw them into a deadly situation, and then they will survive. Trap them in a desperate place, and then they will live, is a famous saying of Sun Tzu, reflecting a useful method he advocated for generals leading armies in battle. He believed that if the troops are placed in death ground, perilous ground, or critical ground, where retreat is impossible and holding ground is unfeasible, the soldiers will unite wholeheartedly and fight fiercely with extraordinary courage to face the enemy in a life-or-death struggle. This can turn danger into safety and defeat into victory. In the first year of the Datong era under Emperor Liangwu, 527 AD, General Chun Qingji defended Guiyang City and confronted the Wei army for several months, engaging in over 100 battles, leaving the Liang army exhausted. At this time, Wei reinforcements attempted to build camps behind the Liang forces. The Liang generals feared being attacked from both front and rear and considered retreating. However, Chun Qingji argued that since their army was greatly depleted and morale was low, they should first place themselves in a situation of death ground before engaging the enemy. Following this strategy, the generals launched a night attack on the Wei camps, capturing 4 encampments. The troops' morale remained high, and they continued pressing forward with prisoners, launching an assault on the Wei main camp and decisively defeating the enemy. 12. Winning by cleverness, precision, focus, and strategic insight. Warfare hinges on accurately grasping and adapting to the enemy's intentions. By concentrating forces toward one direction, even if 1,000 miles away, one can strike down enemy commanders with surprise. This is the art of winning by cleverness. Reflections. Sun Tzu here discusses the strategy of concentrating forces to attack a specific part of the enemy, thereby cleverly securing victory in war. In warfare, it is first essential to understand the enemy's true strategic intentions, then concentrate forces on a primary direction to strike the enemy and achieve success. Whether attacking or defending, the tactic of focusing military strength to strike a portion of the enemy is a common principle among military strategists. 13. Deception and speed, the dual nature of effective warfare. Thus, when launching a military campaign, border passes must be sealed, travel tokens destroyed, and all enemy envoys blocked. Strategic plans must be formulated in utmost secrecy at the highest level of government. Once the enemy reveals an opening, strike swiftly. Prioritize attacking what the enemy holds most dear, and never reveal the exact timing of the assault in advance. Break conventions, adapt to the enemy's moves, and decide action with flexibility. Therefore, in the beginning of war, behave as quietly and innocently as a maiden, luring the enemy into dropping their guard, but once battle commences, act like a fleeing hare, fast and sudden, leaving the enemy no time to react. Reflections. When 2 countries contend and 2 armies clash, it is impossible to follow a battle plan rigidly without adjustment. Generally, one must adapt flexibly according to changes in both enemy and own situation. In combat, one should be still as a virgin, swift as a hare. During the Three Kingdoms period, Cheng Yu of Wei defended Wancheng with only 700 soldiers. Cao Cao considered sending 2,000 reinforcements after hearing that Yuan Shao planned to cross south at Liang, but Cheng Yu refused. He reasoned, Yuan Shao commands 700,000 troops and believes he is invincible. Seeing my small force, he will not attack. If I increase my troops, Yuan Shao might be provoked to attack, and even 2,700 men would not be a match. Indeed, Yuan Shao did not attack Wancheng because of the small garrison. Cao Cao praised Cheng Yu's courage and strategy, saying it surpassed ancient warriors Meng Ben and Xia Yu. He cleverly leveraged Yuan Shao's pride to avoid increasing troops and successfully held Wancheng. This case proves Cheng Yu's superior strategic insight even over Cao Cao's. In the Eastern Han, Lian Fan, the governor of Yunzhong, was another excellent general able to flexibly apply tactics based on the situation. In 73 AD, the northern Xiongnu attacked Yunzhong. With fewer men and horses, Lian Fan knew his forces would be outnumbered. Some suggested requesting reinforcements, but he disagreed, insisting on relying on strategy. Facing a strong enemy, Lien Fan devised a clever ruse to increase his troops. He made cross-shaped torches, instructing each soldier to hold one torch, grip one end, and light the other three ends, then spread out. From a distance, one soldier appeared as three. The Xiongnu fell for the trick, thinking reinforcements had arrived, and hesitated to attack. At dawn, as the Xiongnu retreated, Lien Fan ordered a pursuit, driving them into a panic. Since then, Yunzhong was no longer attacked by the Xiongnu.